Hi there, it's Louise here of Timeless Craft Mama, and today I'm so pleased to be bringing you a scrapbook layout process video that I've created for the round 2 design team call for Bow Bunny. My layout I've titled simply BU, and I was lucky enough to get to play with some of the fabulous papers from the Butterfly Kisses range. Now, in all honesty, when I saw these papers, my initial reaction was, what am I going to do with them? Because they are just a little bit outside of my normal style. But what I found upon going through some of the papers and some of the products in the range was that they are quite versatile. While the colours might initially seem quite feminine, I found that there were a lot of elements that I could use that were going to work really well with my boy layouts. So I have this sort of idea in my mind of what I want to do, and I've made this video so that you can follow that process along. So I've cut some of the Bliss paper, which is that circular one that you can see, and I'm going to work around the center section of this layout. Now I've prepped my paper with some gesso and I've let that dry naturally. The next thing I'm doing is the packaging technique. So I'm taking the double dot coral pearlescent, putting it onto some packaging and then spritzing it with water. Then I just spread that around the page. Now I've done this in 2 layers. So the first layer I did quite light and again allowed it to dry naturally. And then the second layer I'm applying a little bit thicker so it's got that texture in it that pearlescent really gives. So you can kind of see some of the raised areas with that particular product that really give a fabulous texture in the background. So that's the building of that background, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop this strip of paper down the middle of the page, give it a little quick trim because my white background is just not the full 12 by 12, close enough though, and start to work on the parts of this layout that I want. So I knew I wanted to sort of concentrate on that center strip, and I've cut out the foil vellum Dream on Dreamer, and I'm going to use that on my page as well. You'll also notice that throughout the video, I'm sort of going backwards and forwards, fiddling around with a few little different bits and pieces. That's just because I had an idea of what I wanted this to look like in my head, and I couldn't quite get it to happen. So this layout did take a little bit longer than what a normal layout would, but in saying that, I'm a lot more happy with this layout because I didn't rush it. It wasn't just about getting the photo on the pretty page. I had a particular way that I wanted to do this layout, and I think I've achieved that with the final result. So I have mounted my photo onto some of the 6x6 paper pad, and I've also cut out the Delight paper, which is that green banner that you can see in the background. And I'm also using the layered chipboard and the chipboard pieces. So the Be Fabulous is the layered chipboard, and then I've also taken that sort of film strip frame kind of piece to the left of the photo as well. Now what you can see me doing here is I'm actually making my own embellishments. So I've taken the 6x6 paper pad and I've used my Cricut machine, and I've gone ahead and made those rosettes, which really I think added such a great touch to this layout. Lots of texture and lots of interest, and I've also used one of the brads to make the center of that rosette. So when I do this, like to use my hot glue gun because it gives a more instantaneous adherence, so that straight away it sets and you don't have to worry about sitting it down somewhere while it dries with a tacky glue or something like that. So that's just a personal preference for me, but obviously people do things in different ways, so however you create is completely up to you. Now I do only end up using one on this particular page just because I already had that Be Fabulous, which was off to the right hand side. I didn't want to make it too unbalanced as far as the final product is concerned. Now I did also cut out a doily with the 6x6 paper pad, and I was going to replace that white doily on this layout, but I felt that it was too busy in the background, so I stuck with just the plain white doily. I've gone ahead and inked the edges of the green Delight paper, and I'm now going to start attaching some of that down so that I can build more of the embellishing side of this particular page. So I'm going to play with some of the chipboard pieces, and just excuse my issues with the glue here, because I did have a little moment where I peeled all the adhesive off the back of the chipboard piece, so I ended up having to glue it down. So note to self, when you are playing with the chipboard pieces, peel gently, because it just came right off in my hand. Anyway, that's what glue is for. So I'm just playing around with a few bits and pieces here, having a look at some of the cutouts, some of those rosettes, how I'm going to lay them around the page. I knew that I wanted to build interest around this sort of dream on dreamer foil vellum element, but I couldn't quite work out how to do it without it getting too busy and being too overwhelming. So I'm just going to pop some cotton around the page just to liven up that background a little bit. And then I'm happy with where that rosette is sitting, so I know where that's going to go. Now, while I'm looking at this layout, I'm finding that Dream on Dreamer, because it is that foil vellum, it's kind of getting a little lost. And I wanted to raise it up a little bit. I'd already mounted my photo on some card, so I decided to do the same thing with the vellum. So again with the 6x6 paper pad, and then I'm just using a glue stick to attach that, so that I can cut it out and mount it upwards on some cardstock to really bring it forward on the page. Now, as I mentioned earlier, initially I was a bit sort of worried about how I was going to create with these particular elements within the collection, but I wanted to highlight to you just how easy it was to use these products in a different way. So there's no reason why it had to be a feminine type page, and I think that I've really achieved something not necessarily neutral, but that it's not feminine, but it's not masculine either. It's sort of fun and playful, and it's got some different elements in it that came with this collection, and really was a great achievement for me, because I feel like I've created something that I can be quite proud of that was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. So I'm going to start playing around with a few different things here. Some of the die cuts, the cutouts, some of the sticker sheets, and building really that cluster area sort of around that banner and the foil vellum. So this is probably one of the things that I had the most difficult with, and to be honest, some of it might have been that I was a little bit overwhelmed by the products that I'd received. Not so much the collection, but just the variety and the different elements. It was tempting to put a little bit of everything on the page, but I had to really restrict myself and simply use what I would normally use in the scheme of creating an element. Probably didn't help that this was for creating for my position within the Bow Bunny DT team, so I was really a bit stressed already. At the end of the day, I had to think about creating for what I would want to see in my album or my kids' albums down the track as a reflection of my style. So, you know, while I was sort of worried about creating to the best of my ability, I did eventually snap out of that and manage to think of this as not so much an audition, but just creating a layout that I liked, that I would want somebody to look at in an album in the future. So once I sort of got over my little irrational thought process, I was able to create in a much more natural and a much more happy and flowing way. So you can see that I've started to attach, I've got some flowers happening, some more of the layered chipboards, which are really quite fun. They give such depth and dimension to the project. So I'm also playing with just some of the ordinary chipboard pieces, fiddling around, looking for where I want to put things. I don't really want to cover too much of that doily up because I think it gives quite a nice background interest to the page. There's some great little stickers. There's butterflies and bees and florals, borders and sayings and banners. So many fun things to create with that, building a page with this collection really wasn't that hard. Now, I have to be completely honest with you, I am not a fussy cutter. It is absolutely not something that I do as a habit, but there were a few things on this particular paper that I wanted to use around the page. So I'm going to go ahead and do some fussy cutting. Now, I have left some of that out of the video because, let's face it, once you've seen somebody do some fussy cutting, you really don't need to watch me sit and fussy cut. I think the problem with fussy cutting is that I don't have the patience to do it. I love the way it looks, and I'm always in awe of people that have that patience and that ability to fussy cut and create those beautiful layers, but it's just not something that I routinely do on a layout. So another out of my comfort zone type of process for this particular page. You'll also see that I am gluing most of the elements down as I go, and that's because for me personally, I want to make sure that my pages are going to hold up. I know with some of my early scrapbooking pages, I will go through albums and look at them and compare my style and see how things are different, and you'll turn a page and something will fall off. So for me, one of the things that's changed is that I don't rely on the adhesive of the product. I tend to use my own glue to actually adhere that product into place. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using some of the filigree silver rub-ons, and again with the butterflies, and this is just to add a little bit of bling, a little bit of background, a little bit of just some silver to try and create a little bit of interest. Now this flower that you can see me fussy cutting there, I tried so hard to get it on the layout because it was really just a beautiful piece with the ribbon and the background, but I just could not make it work. So even fussy cutting it or starting to fussy cut it, it just was not going to happen. So I left it off the page. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with the final result of this layout, so I don't think that it was actually needed. The final steps that I'm doing in putting this layout together is to add just some silver twine, and this is just to help bring the layered embellishments together. It wasn't a plan that I had going into this, but I sort of felt like I'd built something quite pretty, but it wasn't all working together as one. So I used that silver twine just to create that sort of balance in that final product. Now I'm going to take some of these brads and I'm going to use those around the page. Now I want to put one on the Dream On Dreamer part of the layout, but because of the thickness and because I'd mounted it on cardboard, there was no way I was going to get a brad through it. So what I've done is I've just used my tools to actually trim that brad, and I'm just going to glue it to the page. The rest are okay because I'm going to place them just using my craft knife with a little bit of a hole in that cardstock, but that first one, the silver one, it really needed to be trimmed and glued on. So this layout is now complete, and in all the process took me around about 3 nights by the time I'd let all my elements dry naturally and then played around with some of the embellishments and the chipboards, and finally got a layout that I was happy with. I did stress about it a little bit, but again, as I mentioned earlier, I really wanted a layout that I was going to be happy to look at in the future and know that I'd done my absolute best for this DT application. So there's a couple of close-ups of some elements, and you're also going to see a product list. I really hope you enjoyed this video from me. Don't forget to subscribe, and of course leave me a comment if there was something you liked or you didn't like or you thought could have been better. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Louise of Timeless Craft Mama.